joining us this morning. So, as we said, we are very privileged to have Dr. Ananta join us. If you have not heard of her, I'm very surprised for starters, but essentially she has many accolades to her name, and that's one of the reasons why we've asked her to speak to yourselves this morning. She's currently the president of BIPA. If you haven't heard of BIPA, it is the British Indian Psychiatric Association. Please consider checking out their website. They do lots of things to support IMG doctors, and Dr. Ananta is currently the president of BIPA. She's also the medical director at Lincolnshire Hospitals and Foundation Trust. She is a psychiatrist herself. She has got a fellowship, which is part of the Winston Churchill fellowships, that she did a great piece of work around suicide for. She holds many roles, and she is a fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. So without further ado, I do apologize, we are running a bit behind, but I'll hand over to Dr. Ananta Dave. And thank you again, Dr. Ananta, for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Pooja and Aman. Good morning from the UK. I'm delighted to be part of this program. Looks a fantastic program, and I was really interested in seeing the spread of people from all around the world, Aman. So it's a great privilege. And what I'm about to share with you all today are my personal experiences. So they are one person's experience, but I hope that something somewhere resonates for you all and those who are at the very early stages of their careers in the UK or are considering coming to the UK will benefit or will have something to think about or explore from some of my reflections. So thank you once again for the opportunity, and hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. So if we could have the next slide, please. So as I've said, these are my reflections, and they do not really, they don't, I don't want to generalize them, but at the same time, for some of you, it may make sense as to what it is you've gone through. But, the important point to remember is that everyone who is considering coming to the UK or is in the UK is, you have your own unique story. So it is not about having to be like somebody else or there being a norm which you have to follow. It's about saying that what I bring, my circumstances, my experience, and my motivation is unique to myself. And therefore, my story and the way it develops will be very unique to me. And just to keep that in mind, so you have that sense of a strength that you bring, as well as any worries and anxieties that you may have while considering or having just moved to the UK. Next slide, please. So I just want to say that, as I go along, because I've been in the UK now 26 years. So it might feel like a long time ago, and it is in years, it's a long time ago, and it might feel a bit removed for those of you who have just entered the country. But I just want to say one thing, and it comes up later on in my reflections, is the first day that I entered the UK is as fresh in my mind today as it was then. And that is something that I never want to forget. I never want to forget, or I can never forget. And one should never forget what it was like when you first stepped into an unfamiliar territory, unfamiliar country, and started your career all over again. Because you forget that at your peril. If you can't empathize, or if you can't identify with somebody who's just starting off, I think it's a sad thing, because you're not then passing on, you're not enabling the next generation to come up. So for me, all the inglorious things that have happened, the glories, the support, people who have stood by me all throughout, the people from whom I had negative experiences, it's all fresh in my mind. And for me, the motto of lift as you rise is really important. So if I have managed to navigate these 26 years in the UK and done something, I would also like to give some of that insight and opportunity to everyone else. So it's taken me a long time to be, I suppose, fully proud and aware of my identity in the UK as a British Indian, which brings it with it a glorious combination of the Britishness and the Indianness of my cultural heritage. It does take time, but I think, if for those of you who have the opportunity to think about it right from the beginning, be proud of your identity and be your authentic self. It's very hard to be somebody else in one setting and try and be something else in another setting. So just be proud of your identity. A very small part of it. Now, it's not, it's a concrete thing, and it's not really a very major thing in the overall scheme of things. But when I first came into this country, I felt that I had to dress up like what would be considered the norm for somebody who was British. So I was a bit hesitant about wearing traditional attire and dress into work settings. I have now lost that hesitation, and I celebrate my cultural heritage in the form of a varied attire. Now, that doesn't mean to say that's the only thing that works, but it's just a small point that has made me feel a bit more comfortable about myself. So I'm proud to celebrate that. Next slide, please. So this is just about, a bit about my cultural heritage and my origins. So on the right of my screen, you can see the bridge. It is the Godavari Bridge, the bridge across the river Godavari in Rajahmundry in Andhra Pradesh. That's where I was born. I didn't live there for very long. My father migrated to Mumbai, Bombay as it was then. And so I grew up in Mumbai. I studied there. I went to school, medical school, did my post-graduation, MD in psychiatry at KEM and GS Medical College, got married, and then moved to the UK to start my psychiatry rotation in the UK all over again. And I've spent most of my life in the UK, in Birmingham and the Black Country. So these are towns around Birmingham, so the main city of Birmingham and various towns around it. So that's where I spent most of my life in the UK. For the last 3 years, I've been working in Lincolnshire, where I'm medical director of the NHS Mental Health Trust. But just to say that throughout this time, when I first came to the UK, I've gone through my shares of ups and downs, difficulties in training, negotiating motherhood, maternity leave, getting back to training, trying to keep my head above water. So it's not been plain sailing, and don't let that deter you if things don't work out, at this first go every time. And also to say that although I have gone down the route of management and become a medical director and combine it with other things, that doesn't mean to say that's the only way that you can further your career. It can be through various routes, and this is the route I've chosen and I've taken, and I hope to share some of my things with it. So right now it's a proud combination of Britishness and Indianness, and you can see Birmingham Library there in the left-hand corner, which is an award-winning building. And it is really fantastic. If any of you ever have the opportunity to visit Birmingham, if you don't already live in Birmingham, please do go and visit the library. It's a fascinating space. And that's Lincoln Cathedral, the city where I now work. Next slide, please. So, we all of us have several identities. And for me, I suppose what transcends everything else, once I became a mother, is my identity as a mother. Now, that's just very personal. It doesn't mean, it doesn't have any value judgment attached to it. Those who are not mothers or those who are not parents, absolutely fulfilling lives and huge, roles to play. In my case, for me, my mother's role has become very important, and it comes before anything else. But there are all these other roles that I have. And so I just want to say to you that I regret not giving equal attention to all parts of my roles in the beginning when I was so focused on getting my career right or on the right track. In hindsight, in retrospection, I would say give attention to each part of you, because one feeds the other, and you're not your whole self if you just nourish one side of yourself and let your career suffer or let your personal life suffer. So find a way of melding the whole into a rich combination. Pooja touched upon my role as the president of the British Indian Psychiatric Association. I'm the first female president of that association. It's 25 years old. And for those of you who are psychiatrists and who would like to become part of a supportive network which understands the duality of coming across two cultures, please do consider becoming members. There's a website link at the end. I just want to say it's not restricted to those of Indian origin or those who are Indians. It is open to all. I mean, at the moment, it's a psychiatric association, but if there are any non-psychiatrists here who would like to become members, please do get in touch. We try to be as inclusive as possible, because I think ultimately every profession or specialty flourishes by its connections with others, and we cannot survive in isolation. So it's open to all. And please do consider looking it up if you're interested. It's just one of the many organizations which are available in the UK, which bring you that combination of your cultural heritage and celebration along with a professional group as well that you belong to. So next slide, please. And I think this is the thing that I've touched upon about bringing the whole part of you to life, if you like. And I have found this a combination very life affirming, where you talk about being, becoming, and belonging. Now, being is about your identity, who you are, how you identify, what is it that's important to you, how would you like to describe yourself, and how would you like to be seen by others. How would you like to realize the fullness of your identity, whatever it is? That's about being. And I think sometimes when we move across to another culture, there is a need to conform. And I can understand that as you try and make things easier for yourself, but to not lose your identity in the confirmation. Confirmation doesn't mean becoming somebody else. Conforming means making yourself richer by adding something to what you already have. The other one is becoming. So, all of you are here today because you want to further in your career, make progress, either by migrating or have already migrated, and you're thinking of what you need to do to take the next steps in your career. Pass exams, start training, finish training, become a consultant, pass your PLAB exam and start the specialty of your choice. So whatever it is, that's important. So becoming whatever, and this is just professional. But there are other aspects of your lives which are equally important, which is about becoming whatever it is that you want to become. So pay attention to that as well. Is being compromising your becoming? So if you have to develop an identity, is it at the expense of having to give up some part of your aspirations? And be mindful of that. And the other one is belonging. Now, this is particularly important for all of us who are international medical graduates. And I think when you first come to a new culture, a new country, it is understandable that you feel a bit out of it all. You don't feel you fit in, and that's natural. And it's not about rushing through it or pretending that phase doesn't exist. The transitional phase exists, but it is important equally for those of us who are migrating or coming in to try and see what are the networks that we can create or become part of, so that we feel connected, we feel that we belong somewhere, we feel anchored. Equally, it is the responsibility of those who are already here, myself, for example, to do my bit in making others feel as if they belong here. And events like these are part of that. Not only do they help you with exams, but they help you connect with people all across the world, people who have similar aspirations or ambitions to yourself, people who are like you and who can help you navigate an unfamiliar landscape. So I just like to think of all these three things coming together. And frequently, when things feel a bit rough, I step back and think about where I am in this whole process. Next slide, please. So, I think most of you will be in that, sorry, if you could, yeah. Most of you would be in this phase, I suppose, of learning. If you're trying to pass exams, if you're trying to, enter a new country and start off a new part of your career, etc. But what I have found, is to have that learning approach throughout life. So I still keep learning a lot. I think, get back more than I give. So by being part of this session today and sharing my insights, I get back much more actually. I learn some more, I get more insights. So by learning, you will teach, and by teaching, you will learn. And I think not to let go of that attitude. And as I have said, becoming a senior member in my profession or a board director does not mean that I have done it the smooth way. There have been lots of ups and downs, failures and falls. And so, you learn each time from those experiences. So rather than letting it diminish you, let it make you grow. Next slide, please. And the importance of asking. Now, I hesitated a long time to ask, because the first thing you feel when you ask, especially when you're new, is somehow your incompetence or your naivety or your ignorance will be caught out. Believe you me, I mean, I have medical students posted with me, trainees, core trainees, specialist trainees, middle grade, staff, SAS doctors. And I say to all of them, no question is a stupid question. So please ask. I actually like when people ask, because it's a measure of their being engaged and their being wanting to learn and grow and know. So please ask. And as I said here, I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, but it helps you clarify. I mean, so many things. And asking is important, because unless you ask, sometimes people don't know that you want feedback, that you need more time, that you want some more data, that you want some help, that you want to know why this particular thing matters. So ask, it's an important thing to do. Next slide, please. And we've talked about the importance of network, and that's the link for BIPA, the British Indian Psychiatric Association, of which I'm the president. And for those who are interested, as I said, please consider joining. We do try and provide a friendly welcome to those who are new, or even those who are established in this country. If you've not yet discovered BIPA, please do consider, because you just get to meet people who are from your part of the world. And also we come together to celebrate not only psychiatry and learn from each other, but celebrate the Indian heritage. So we just had our annual conference a few weeks ago, and we do have a family-friendly event where we encourage all members to bring their families along, share a meal, an evening meal. There's dancing, dinner, songs, prizes. So we try and make it an evening, a weekend to remember, where we are celebrating our culture as well as learning about psychiatry and from each other. And I think the other thing that I would like to say is, maybe it sounds trite, but it isn't, is when you belong to a network, or when you join a network, or when you interact with people, just be very, very clear about your values. I mean, what we stand for, what matters to us, what are the maxims by which we live our life or lead our life, are important at every stage, whatever stage of your career you are. And don't forget that. I mean, I say later, don't forget your roots, but don't let go of those values. They are your bedrock and your foundation, which help you grow from a safe base. So I think holding on to your values and having an idea of where you want to go. Now, becoming a consultant might seem like a long way away if you've just started, training for your PLAB exam. But that's how you get there, step by step. But so having that vision helps you to just get there. So I would say hold on to those values, have a vision, or at least a kind of landscape of your future that you have in your mind, and try and seek out networks that support you. Next slide, please. And so these are, I suppose, some of the things that I have learned along the way, the hard way sometimes. And these are things that have helped me. So as I said, holding on to your values, learning, asking, belonging to a network, having a plan. These are things which are important, which have served me well, and which I have tried to share with others. One of the other things is, especially when you come to the UK, in psychiatry definitely, but in most other professions, you learn the importance of working as part of a team, because the concept of a multidisciplinary team made up of doctors, nurses, various allied health professionals, occupational therapists, psychotherapists, various kinds of, even if it is those who are the phlebotomists, the technicians, they all make up, the voluntary workers, the carers, they all make up a team. And the importance of the team is really important. So try and build that team and become part of that team building. Because if you have a strong team, not only can they achieve impossible things like moving mountains, but they can ward off dangers and threats like warding off sharks. And in the age of COVID, when we are all reeling in an uncertain world, preparing for the next wave, the next part of the pandemic, people are uncertain. The importance of teams, whether it is a team at home, being together as a family, a group of friends supporting each other, or your team at work, it can't be overstated, the importance of team building. Next slide, please. And I love this quote by Brené Brown about, talk to yourself like you would talk to someone you love. And it's the importance, I suppose, of looking after yourself and prioritizing yourself when there are multiple competing demands. As a doctor, you're studying for exams, doing on-calls, trying to, keep the house running, doing all the tasks as you have to in the UK on your own. Driving around, picking up your children, dropping them, doing the homework with them, and at the same time just trying to keep your head above water, trying to deal with COVID. So there's always something else which feels like it's a greater priority than you are. And I have done that. I neglected myself in the initial stages of the pandemic, because I felt that I had such a big responsibility on me as the medical director when the pandemic struck. I immediately became responsible for the immediate welfare and safety of all the medical staff in the trust and for the quality and safety in the organization. So I felt a huge burden on me. And I know that I went, I tried to do with very little sleep. I wouldn't take any breaks. I wouldn't eat much. It affected my well-being. I did make use of, apps you get like Headspace, etc. In the UK. I didn't feel ashamed to say, look, I'm struggling. I need some time out. I need to learn basics. How do I get to sleep? Healthy sleep routine, healthy lifestyle. So that's when I realized that not looking after myself isn't going to help anyone. So do what nourishes you, whatever it is. For me, I found connecting with nature, taking photographs, just walking in the fresh air, even if it is for 15 minutes in the middle of a day or at the end of the day, half an hour, whatever it was, just reconnecting with nature, drinking in the silence, the freshness, whatever nature gave us. I found that incredibly healing. And I started writing. I started writing poetry. And, it could be different things for all of you. Cooking helps for some, just sitting in front of a window, watching some, funny things on television, whatever works, catching a power nap in the middle of the day or the evening. But keep yourself nourished. It's so important. Love yourself like you would love your patients and your family members. Next slide, please. And, I've mentioned this before. There are things that it's important to remember. Remember your roots. Where you come from, the cultural heritage, the richness of it is your unique identity. It is your anchor, your foundation. Don't let go of it. That's not how you become a better person, but it is by, integrating it along with what you're about to learn. So as I said, I never forget my first day in this country, the people who looked after me and treated me well. And I just say to you, just remember that. And, to celebrate your identity, your culture, your contributions. You're coming to this country not just with some anxieties and some vulnerabilities. You're bringing strength. What you have learned back home can help the NHS here or the healthcare system here. And you're human, not superhuman. I have a particular interest in the well-being of doctors, the mental health of doctors. I feel there is a huge stigma around getting help for mental health problems, and I've done my Churchill Fellowship on that, mental illness and preventing suicide in doctors. But you need to start much earlier, long before somebody becomes that ill. And I think there is a culture in medicine which promotes being superhuman somehow, right from medical school. Don't admit to weaknesses. Don't say you can't cope. Don't ask for help. Don't admit you're having mental health problems. Don't seem emotional, stiff upper lip. You might hear various versions of it, but you are human and you forget that at your peril. And as I've said, the importance of your values, relationships, the things you've learned, your mentors, your sponsors, people who have helped me right from the beginning when I didn't know what my trajectory was going to be in this country. They saw something in me, reached out to me. Those are the people you treasure. And you do the same for others after you because you always have privilege compared to somebody else. Next slide, please. And so, this is my leadership journey, I suppose, in a nutshell, or my journey in the UK about, the things that helped me. As I've alluded to all of those things here. So just something that helps me. It's my roadmap, if you like. Next slide, please. I'm not sure how much time I have, but I'm very happy to pass through the next slides. These are some of the things, in the previous slide, I've talked about finding something which rouses your passion, something which really means so much to you. And for me, being a good doctor, being a good psychiatrist, being a good child and adolescent psychiatrist is extremely important. And I've done that over the last 25 years to the best of my ability. But I also want to give back to the wider field of medicine. And so some of the things that have driven me and which have made me, I suppose, step out of my comfort zone and seek other positions is, as I said, the mental health of doctors. Next slide, please. It's also about, making sure that we understand inequalities. There are various ways in which inequalities have been amplified during COVID. And if we look at all the other groups around us and think of those who might be more marginalized than us and how we can include them more into things, that makes it a better society and better place for everyone to be. Next slide, please. And something about, diversity in leadership. Now, you all might have heard of the the blind man and the elephant story, and about how each of you views something from your own perspective. And none of those perspectives are complete in their own right, how much of a right they may be, but they're only one part of the whole. And the importance of that diversity of thinking and perspectives in a team is so important, which is why that multidisciplinary approach is important in your clinical work. And the diverse approach is important at board level. At board level directors, there are very few who look like us, talk like us. There are very few who are from an ethnic minority origin, fewer women of color, fewer people with disabilities. So the more we have diversity at those very senior decision-making levels of the organization, the better decisions that will be made for patients and for communities. So wherever you are able to bring that kind of diversity to your leadership, whether it's in your clinical team or somewhere else. So the importance of diversity in leadership and decision making really important, matters a lot to me. Next slide, please. And I suppose that's played out in COVID as well, when we see, white privileged men making decisions which then don't work for everyone else. I've talked about the importance of lift as you climb. Take others after you. If you have been given power and freedom, empower others or free others. Next slide, please. So I have come to a rambling end to my reflections and things that have helped me and have resonated with me. But this is your story, each one of you, all the 326 people on the call. You have the chance to create your unique story, whichever specialty you are coming into. So create your own IMG story. These are the seeds. And each day is a new beginning, and each ending gives us a new beginning as well. So remember that, and launch forth whatever you want to do. And next slide, please. So I just want to say that, if people do want to contact me for any general advice for anything, I'm happy to be contacted. I have a Twitter handle for those who are on Twitter. I don't use any other social media. I am contactable by email for generally any reflection, support, mentoring, or any other questions you might like. And remember, IMG also means inspirational medical graduate, because this country, in the UK, the NHS and healthcare would not be the same without international doctors. It is the richer for it, and it has been able to provide very good care because of you all. So all the very best on your journey. And I hope that you're all able to forge paths which mean a lot to you and which help you develop the fullness of your identity. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Ananta, for that very insightful talk and sound advice. I think lots of people would have been able to relate to your story and would have felt very inspired. So just a couple of questions coming through, if that's okay. Someone's asking, Ananta, is there any opportunities for clinical attachments at your trust? And if so, what's the best way of getting in touch?
Okay, so yes, there are opportunities. The short question is yes, we have over the years supported people through clinical attachments for those who are interested in having a career in psychiatry. Afterwards, some may go on to other careers, but we do have a limited number of spaces. So the best place, I suppose, would be the human resources departments, what we call the medical HR department. So I will provide that address to you, Pooja and Aman, and if you can just put it in the chat afterwards, and we'll try and see what we can do if people are interested in getting an attachment with us.
Sure, brilliant. Thank you.
Ananta, firstly, thank you. Really, really good talk. I think some really inspiring words there for doctors who are at any stage of their career, really, whether they're at the beginning or whether they're already kind of halfway through. So it was really, really inspiring. And a question's come in about challenges. In this journey of yours, what was the biggest challenge and how did you overcome it?
I think for me, I would say that the not being taken seriously because I was a woman, an immigrant, and a woman of color was a huge shock. I mean, to be very honest with you, I think we have to be always honest about, the fullness of our cultures, the good and the bad of it. So gender discrimination, sexism is something that, I've experienced in my culture and back when I was in India as well. So it wasn't completely new to me, but what threw me, I suppose, was the combination of my ethnicity mattering so much in this country whereas you blend in India. I mean, I was like everyone else. So a combination of my ethnicity, my gender, and my immigrant status. So the challenges have been many at an individual level. It's about patients not wanting to see me because I was not a proper doctor, because I had a foreign accent. It was people just not letting me speak, or people making comments like, have you taken permission from your husband to apply for this role, and who is going to look after the children at home if you take on this role, or if you become a consultant, and how does it feel that you've not passed it. So I did not pass my MRC Psych Part 1 the first attempt, and people said that, oh, and then I became pregnant, and people said, maybe, well, you should concentrate on your pregnancy first rather than trying to attempt exams. And as it happened, I took my Part 1 and Part 2 within 6 months of each other and passed them before I had my baby. So it was about people, so I think discrimination, being ignored, being overlooked, and somehow an assumption being made that I wasn't good enough at every stage. So that has been, I have experienced it right from the beginning. And it's almost as if I had to make a case for why I was ambitious. Why did I want to do more than what I was doing at that stage? So the challenge, the practical challenges of passing exams while dealing with pregnancy and maternity was one. The discrimination around various characteristics or part of my identity was another, and challenges of just settling into a new country. So I remember when I first came to this country, I was taken to the flat at the doctor's quarters, and I was given a tin opener and a can of baked beans and some slices of bread, and I didn't know what the tin opener was. So the person who showed me into the flat took me, and she gave me some bed sheets and some blankets, and she said, oh, by the way, this is for you, and she left. And I was busy just orientating myself, and I didn't sort of think of asking her. And then I looked at this tin of beans, and I looked at this tin opener. I just didn't have a clue how to open the tin. So right from those very practical early things about, well, how do you, now it's a bit more different, it's more globalized, I suppose. There's more awareness of these things. We have now these things in India. In India, I hadn't seen a tin opener, I hadn't seen a proper slice of cheese, I hadn't seen butter the way it is now, I hadn't seen baked beans. Now it is different. I mean, when I visit India, my family is aware of all these things, but it's just some of the small things which can create big cultural divides. So, and when people were hugging each other under the Christmas tree, I felt so embarrassed. I didn't know what was happening. So I think cultural challenges have been many, and I think, of course, there have been times when I've, taken a wrong step, but I suppose in retrospect, I didn't let it deter me. What I would say to people is, it's okay to make mistakes, fall down, stumble, get up again. It just, you never forget those lessons. It makes you stronger. But also, even if you are being discriminated against, even if you find one person who believes in you and who supports you, who values you, that can make the whole difference. And that's what happened to me. I just needed one person to say, you're good, you can help us learn a lot, I think you'll be good for this role. If let me come and coach you, I can help you pass this. Just that one person made a difference to me, and I'll never forget that person in my life. Professor Bhomik, I always take his name, my mentor and sponsor. He's no more, but he believed in me when no one else did. And you just need that one person.
That's just amazing, isn't it? I think so many people currently tuned in will probably be in a similar situation where, hopefully, now if they're presented with a can of beans and a tin opener, they have some idea of what to do. Little things, isn't it, that make a huge difference, as you said. So lots of questions coming in, Ananta. I might put two together, if that's okay. Lots of people appreciating your talk and for you being so candid about your experience. So thank you, Dr. Ananta, for sharing your experience with us. How to increase my chances to start a training program in psychiatry in general and as a female in particular is one question. And just somebody has asked, did the discrimination get better over time? And do you now feel the society is not as discriminative as before? So a bit of a deep question there, but hopefully you can answer.
No, absolutely. And I think, this is about candid conversations, isn't it? It's not about sugarcoating and glossing over. Neither is it about saying that things can't be overcome. Now, about psychiatry, I think the first thing I would say is I would recommend it to people who are interested in the profession. Don't do it as an alternative because you can't think of anything else. Because, it's none of the specialties are easy. psychiatry demands a lot of you emotionally and really enters into the story of the person. And there's a lot of blurring of boundaries between what is normal behavior or, just what society expects of us versus what is pathological or illness. So, I mean, I chose psychiatry because I was always interested in it. And I first came to this country because I was interested in doing child and adolescent psychiatry, which wasn't available in India. That was my aim. And then I stayed back. So, when you've passed your PLAB exams, I think try and get attachments which will help you to get further experience in psychiatry if you're interested in psychiatry as a career. Again, you can approach mentors who are psychiatrists who will help you navigate not only through the exams at the beginning or the PLAB, etc., but also afterwards how to plan your career. Joining an organization like the British Indian Psychiatric Association, as I said, it's open to all psychiatrists, not just Indians or British Indian psychiatrists. Anyone is welcome. Happy to support anyone who is interested in knowing psychiatry and psychiatrists. So these are some of the ways in which you can get into a career in psychiatry. So once you've got your registration, etc., your full registration after you've done your PLAB and attachments and all paperwork, of course, you can apply for the core training program in this country once you've got full registration. If not, there are other ways, till you become eligible to apply for core training, or if you decide not to go down that route, there are ways of applying for, fixed term posts which give you experience in psychiatry. And then you can go down the route of, a staff and associate specialist post and going through alternative routes of entering the GMC specialist register. If you don't want to go down the route of further exams and training. Of course, if you want to go down the route of training and exams, you can make yourself eligible for applying for a core training program. Then core training, specialist training, and of course, whatever specialty you want to go into. So that's about psychiatry. About the discrimination part of it, yes, it did get better. I suppose as you become more confident, you become better at dealing with it. But on the whole, I have to say, although there's a lot of talk of racism and institutional discrimination in the wake of COVID, as a society and as a country, we have become better at dealing with it, calling it out, speaking up about it, and finding people who will support us. See, people who are discriminatory will not disappear from society. So it's very difficult to say that there are less of them than before. But what we do have now are more mechanisms to help those who are being discriminated against, more people who are willing to support you, more people who are willing to speak up for you, and and act like the Equality Act or various workplace procedures which make it unacceptable to discriminate. So the mechanisms of support are more, and it does get easier. And that's why I like to mentor people right from the beginning, that even if you're not able to speak out, somebody like me can speak out on your behalf, or somebody like me in your organization can speak out. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, really helpful. And we're actually getting a lot of questions on both of these topics, and they're both psychiatry entry. And just to remind people, we do have a specific talk on how to get into psychiatry. So we'll probably try and delay some of those questions technically about how to apply for that talk. But a lot of questions about the discrimination side of things and what can you do to help get past it, etc. I think you covered most of that in that answer, which was great. There's one question that came in and said, when you first wore Indian clothes to work, what was the first reaction from colleagues and then from patients as well?
That's a good question. Well, it was interesting. I mean, I think I got more acceptance from patients. I have to say, I'm just trying to think. On those days, I did perhaps see follow-up patients who already knew me, not somebody whom I'd met for the first time. But I think, since then I've gone into A&E with Indian clothes and done on-calls. So I think patients are mainly interested in making sure that you treat them respectfully as a doctor, and then comes about how you are dressed. Of course, there will always be patients who might make up their mind, but on the whole, they want somebody who treats them well and who does the right thing by them. So I would say, most importantly, apart from anything else, discrimination, you have to be a good, committed, compassionate doctor. That really shows up, and makes the patient feel a bit reassured. So that's the important bit. Firstly, you've got to be a good doctor. So, and the other thing about colleagues is, when I first wore it, it didn't really elicit that much of a reaction. And I think part of me thought, I don't know whether people are a bit, feeling a bit awkward, or just, don't really see this as anything different. But I persevered. And then I started getting more questions and curiosity, and it was interesting. It then started off a conversation about the different festivals and what we do, and people first became aware in my organization that there were quite a few people, for example, who celebrate Diwali, and who were all working on their day of festival. And I was saying to them, it feels a bit like I'm working on Christmas, like you would be working on Christmas, for example. So it then started off a conversation about cultures and what we do, what's important to us. And in fact, some of my colleagues were so interested. I've since gone to India and got back Indian clothes for them as presents, and they've worn it. And there's some photos on Twitter of some of my British colleagues wearing Indian clothes. So it did. I think, if you persevere, if you just do it with pride, and you just answer questions open, it does open up. That small act of wearing traditional dress opens up a whole conversation about cultural diversity, which I think is so important in organizations.
Amazing. Pooja, I don't know if you want to thank on our behalf, but I've certainly found this a really, really amazing talk, and the comments that are coming in are reflecting that, Ananta. So people have found it very inspiring. So it's a great start, I think, to the conference, Pooja.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll forward the comments across, because I think it's very important for you to also see the impact you've had this morning on so many people. Both male and female are saying thank you for being so inspiring. It's made me feel more relieved about the process, about coming to the UK, feeling more encouraged. So yes, thank you ever so much for your talk and giving up your time. I know you're very busy and you've done a lot to be here this morning. So really thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your contact details as well. So, just we'll do a quick poll, just for your own reference, and just to see the impact you've had this morning. So guys, if you can click one of the options, that would be great.
Yeah, let's get to 70%, guys. We're up to 45 already. Do you feel more confident? There you go, Ananta. 8%.
Excellent. Very happy to talk to the two. Yeah, very happy to talk to the 2% who don't feel more positive as well. All feedback welcome. And as I said, I try and pay back. And if I can help anyone by this talk, that'll be good. So all the very best to all of you. Thank you. Fantastic conference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.